Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. Today we're going to explain chapter 4 in our industrial safety and environment class. And chapter 4 basically is talk about the chemical safety. In this particular chapter that you're going to find it in page 4.1, and in 4.0 it's give you some introduction about that chapter. So basically in the beginning of that chapter it's talk the benefit and the useful of the chemicals. How is the chemicals it is important for us, and also how those chemicals is like it can easily will impact and affect our daily use or daily life, uh, let's say while we have our normal activity. So it is important, it is very useful for human to have those chemicals, but at the same time, on the other hand, if we are not following the safety procedure, this is where we're going to have a problem and we're going to have an issue. So the book, it's like they have, let's say, term or definition of the chemical safety. So the book clearly said that the chemical safety is how to prevent the accident and injuries while we are using the chemicals in the workplace. So that's mean that how we will protect ourselves from those chemicals. If someone will get contact with the chemicals in the workplace during the operation in the workplace, this is where the person can get affected. So keep it in your mind that in the workplace that it doesn't mean only in the warehouse, or it's like just in storage, or like while we are storing that. No, it's like it's all the application. Either we are storing or while we are using the chemical as well. So that this is the idea how we will protect ourselves from those chemical hazards. And 4.1 is talk about the way, or let's say the route, how the chemicals it will get to our body. So the book it's like explained in three different ways, where that's the first area it will be through the air passing the lungs, so like someone breathing that fume and gases, it will be generated through this chemical reaction. For example, the gases and the fume it will come outside of the containers, someone will breathe it, so it will go to our chest, it's our lungs. So that's the first application or the first way how to get that chemicals. The second application it will be through the gut. Another word of gut it will be the stomach. So the idea here is that someone touch contaminated surface, like I have left some of the chemicals on the table or on the surface. So my hand get there, then I have eat something after that. So all those chemicals that get to my hand, now it will get to my stomach. So this is the second application. The third application or the third way it will be through, or it's like by absorbing. So my skin it will absorb that chemicals. So let's say that's either that specific type of chemicals it can easily absorb through my skin, or for example I have some cuts and injury in my hand, and they get to work with that chemical, so it's easily to absorb that. For example, my fingers or my hand or any area in my body as well. 4.1.1 let's talk about the time before the chemicals it will start giving effect. So now, from person to another, it will be the impact. It will be different. So, for example, those three areas will be the amount of the chemical that absorbs. So, for example, that's I've been get contaminated with, let's say, 100 gram, okay, of specific chemicals. Somebody else he have been contaminated or he get affected with that specific chemicals with 200 gram. So the person he received 200 gram, he will receive more effect than me because I have received only 100. So that's the first idea, or the first important point. The second thing that this will be the natural of the chemicals. Now the chemicals we will explain it in this chapter. We will have four different hazards of the chemicals. So the natural of the chemicals it will play another role. Then the last thing it will be the sustainability of the individual chemicals. It's like how the chemicals is like. It has the, let's say, the ability of the chemicals, okay, and we will explain more on those when we will reach the other area in this chapter, which is the hazard chemical. So in 4.2 let's talk about the safety, or let's say steps in chemical safety. So very basic steps that everyone should follow it. So if we're going to follow those, let's say, four steps, everyone should be safe. So first of all, those four main steps it will be know the hazard chemicals, and that's what we're going to explain it in the coming slides as well. And use the necessary protection. The necessary protection that we have been explaining it in the previous chapter, in chapter 1 and 2, like wearing the goggles. I need to wear the gloves. So basically, it's like the personal protective equipment. I need to wear, for example, let's say the lab coat, all those necessary protection to protect me from that specific chemicals. And also the third point is follow the safety work practice, or let's say, or the procedure. So for example, in Jubail Industrial College, that we have one procedure that's in each lab. We are not allowed, for example, to bring like our food or drinks inside the lab. This is the safety procedure, so we need to follow that as well. No one enter to the chemical lab without what? Wearing the personal protective equipment, or the PPE. So this is part of the safety procedure. So everyone should follow that. And also know the emergency procedure. So in case of emergency, what I should do? What is the contact information? Who should be informed in case of emergency, etc. All those areas is also an important. So those are the 4 steps. I need to know the hazard of the chemical. I need to use the personal protective equipment, and also I need to follow the safety procedure. And the last thing, I need to know what is the emergency procedure in case of emergency. So in 4.2.1, this is how, let's say, that we need to know and understand that we mainly have 4 types of hazard chemical. So toxic agent, reactive, corrosive, flammable, and combustible. So each of one of them, it's like, what does it mean? So for example, toxic agent. What does toxic agent mean? So toxic agent is, these are the poisons. And if someone get contact with it, it will be what? It will lead you or cause you to illness or death sometime if you receive like large amount of that. Then the buckets give you a couple of examples here, like ammonia, chlorine, etc. So this is the first, let's say, hazard with the chemicals. And also we have reactive. So reactive, this is another hazard of chemicals, and these chemicals can burn and explode, and also give some toxic gases if it is a drop, if it is heated. If basically, it's like, we know it's like it is basic chemistry in this area. Now I'm going to explain it. We understand and know that some of the chemicals, if I will start checking the chemicals, it will have some chemical reaction. If I'm going to change the temperature, if I'm cooling the temperature, if I'm heating this specific chemicals, what will be happen? I will have some chemical reaction. So those chemicals, particular chemicals that we are talking about it now, this is what we call reactive. So these chemicals can burn and explode and give some toxic gases if this one, it will be drop, heated, mixed with other chemicals as well. Then the third type, we have the corrosive, and these can easily burn the skin or leaves. So basically, it's like a classic example of this is what? An acid, for example. If someone get dropped with that specific chemical, like corrosive, what will be happen? It will start burn. Sometimes if that's pH level, it's like it's too high, even it can make some hole. It's not necessarily to be like our human body, but even the surface or any subject that will be like tables or any material that's, if I have a drop from the corrosive materials, can easily make a big hole, or it's like it depends to the chemical and it depends to the pH level in that specific chemicals. Then also we have the last type, which is the flammable and combustible, and these liquid and gases can easily catch on fire. So a classic example of this, like gasoline, benzene, diesel, all those an example of what? Flammable and combustible material. So with these specific chemicals, what will be happen in this area, as soon as it catch on fire, as soon as it catch heat, it will ignite immediately. Then the next area that we have, 4.2.1.1, let's talk about the material safety data sheet. As a short, that we have MSDS. So we have seen MSDS, that means the material safety data sheet. Okay, so if you ask yourself, what does MSDS mean, or what does the material safety data sheet mean? Just like I will simplify it for you. This is the document that you will have all the information, all the important information that you need to know about that specific chemicals that in your hand. So it will explain all the important information. First of all, this is the manufacturing document that you will receive it for the chemicals, and it will explain all the important stuff. And if we were going to check those five let's say area, that's all the MSDS information that it will be provided. It's been listed and it's showing for you in page 4.2. The information provided by the MSDS as following. We have 5 different area or important area in there. It will give the information about how to handle and use the chemical. And also it will give you the colors and the odds, so the smell of the chemicals. And also it will give you the health effects of someone get contaminated with that specific chemicals. What kind of health effect that person he will receive. Then the 4th area, it's about how to store and dispose the chemicals in the workplace. So how I'm going to get rid of, dispose, that mean if I have some remaining of the materials of the chemicals, how I will get rid of. And also how to store it. It should have like cooling or heating, etc. Okay, and the last thing, it will give you an emergency information. So in case of emergency, how I can handle that specific chemicals. Okay, in case of a spill, in case of fire, in case of explosion, etc. So what is the right action that I should take? And this is the label of the MSDS is based on the container. It should be placed in the containers, and also it should be placed in the area where the employees will be let's say handle those chemicals. And also it is important things, that's an advice for everyone, because I'm 100% sure that the MSDS material, you will see it and you will experience that in your career in the future. Regardless where you're going to work, regardless how big or small the company is, the MSDS or the SDS, you're going to find it in front of you. So the important things here that you need to read the MSDS before you handle the chemicals. Do not wait till the last moment where we have the emergency, then you try to go back and try to find those information. So this is my advice to you in this point or regarding the MSDS. So if we will flip the other page, or we're going to see like in page 4.3, that's we're going to see like a big Excel sheet in there. This is basically a topic, typical example of the MSDS. Now the MSDS in reality it will be a little bit different. It's not going to be like an Excel sheet like that, but this is an example like about ammonia. So this is how we're going to see like those 5 main areas that we have been explained a little bit earlier. So it will show you an area where, first of all, it will show you the chemicals and the amount, like for example, the ammonia. It's give you the name, it will give you the information there. We're going to see all this, let's say the category. So we have the health hazard effect. So what is the health hazard effect? So for example, that also we have the fire and reactivity. So it will show you, for example, and the specific details there. First of all, it will consider as a flammable. And it's give you like it will be explosive limits in between 16 and 25 in gas and air, etc. So it's give you some specific details in there. For example, if we will go all the way to the bottom where it's talk about the first aid, for example. So it's give you also the first aid in 3 terms, like if someone get inhalate or through his eye or his skin, or even if he swallow. So it's like he have taken a portion of the ammonia. So by mistake that he drank, or you remember that you have absorbed through the gut. So someone been touched those chemicals or this ammonia, then he have eat, and so it's good to his system. So what is the right action in there? So show you, for example, if someone inhalate, so if someone breathe the ammonia, what is the best practice here? The book is showing you like, or the example, move the victim to the fresh air. So it will give you more specific details here and there regarding the ammonia. So in 4.2.2 stock, use the necessary protection. You remember that you have been explained it. Use the PPE, the personal protective equipment. So we have 6 different areas that the book have been explained here. So it's still you like use the safety goggles with the side shield, So we need to wear like the safety goggles, so it will be sealed, it will be covered around, or let's say the area that's have my eye. Face shield or mask, so I need to wear the face shield in some application. Now in another application, it needs some mask, or we will go also the respiratory system. Also we need to use gloves. Then also we need to use the safety shoes, and also we need to have what? We need to wear the coverall or lab coat. And the last thing is that an approved respiratory system. So now we go over those 6 steps, right? Or 6 different PPE. Now those should be specific design for handling chemicals. So you remember in chapter 1 that we have been explaining that and some of the chemicals, or let's say in some of the application or duty, it will be ask you for specific PPE. So this is an important to keep it in your mind. So in 4.2.3 we need to follow the safe work practice. So this time it's come to my some part of my responsibility. So in the first area, it's talk about how to store and how to dispose these chemicals. Now it is important to know that first of all that some of the chemicals should have some cooling system, or some of the chemicals should have what? Some heating process. So where I'm going to find this information? I'm going to find it in the MSDS, in the material safety data sheet. Now, a few things that is very important while I need to store these chemicals or dispose these chemicals. I need to make sure that I need to have a few things. I need to have a good ventilation system. What does ventilation system mean? Ventilation system mean here that the air that it will be inside the room or inside the chemical lab, it should go out of the room. Not recycling, it is what it's considered, or let's say it's called ventilation. So all the previous air, it will be in this specific room, it will be out of that specific room. And also if I need to move some containers, what I should do here, I need to have it in sealed approved container. It should be an approved container. When we are saying this, if I'm going to transfer the chemicals from location to another, I need to make sure. So for example, that's now I have a classic example here. Now with this specific water bottle, it's like let's say it is not sealed. So if someone not close it well, what will be happen? I have some drop of water over here. Now you need to avoid having this with chemicals. So it will be very hazard and dangerous if someone try to move some chemicals and it is not designed and approved container in that. I will give you a very basic, or let's say classic example that we usually do it as an activity. If someone run out of gas, okay, what is the most likely, what is the normal practice? People, they go to the gas station, then they go to the supermarket over there. They try to find what? The largest water bottle that they have it there. They will throw the water, then they fill the gas. They fill the gasoline in that container, then they go and fill their car, right? So the water bottle, it's not originally designed to let's say hold this specific gasoline, for example, or diesel, or any another chemical. So what will be happen, for example, if I'm taking this bottle or this container, and what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to have an acid. It will not hold it. It will be basically, what will be happen here, it will be melt. So this is when we are saying approved container, that means it's been designed and specific for those chemicals. The second area, we have the handling the chemicals. Before handling the chemicals, we said that we need to make sure that we need to go over the MSDS. We need to read the MSDS. We need to understand all that information. For example, that some of the areas usually the MSDS is provide that do not use or eat, for example, or smoke while you are handling chemicals. So you have chemicals in your hand, do not eat or do not smoke, because you have no idea. It's like what is the effect that you will find there. Whenever is using the PVC acid suit and gloves, also make sure that you are washing, you go under the safety wash, okay, and wash all those let's say remaining of the chemicals that suit before you take out the suit. And also the last area or the last important point, it's mixing the chemicals. So I have a question to you, that's who can mix the chemicals? Now, if you are a chemical engineer, or if you are a mechanical engineer, or if you are, let's say, safety engineer, can I do the mixing of the chemicals? The question here, it's like it's open this subject, because every time that we find it in the industry, this is where we have an issue, that people, they try to mix chemicals, they have no clue what's the chemical reaction it will come after that. So mixing the chemicals, that's clearly the book mentioned it, and clearly they have usually, as usual practice, use it in the industry, that mixing the chemicals, only the trained and qualified person should do the chemicals mixing. So not everyone that can mix the chemical. And also this mixing process, it should be under what we called the chemical hood. It's like where it's have a good ventilation. So if I'm doing the mixing of any chemical reaction, any gases, any fume, it will be generate, it will be take it out with this good ventilation system, and it will be completely out of that specific location and the classroom or that chemical lab. The last point in this chapter, in 4.2.4, it's know, or it's talk about, you need to know the emergency procedure and the first aid. And as we mentioned, this 4 steps of the chemical, or this is the last steps in the chemical safety, that we need to know and have fully knowledge of the emergency procedure and the first aid. And one of the good practice of that is using the material safety data sheet. It will give you all the specific information there. It is good and smart that for everyone to know the emergency contact information. So in case of emergency, that you need to know, and you keep those numbers on your phone and in your mind. So anytime that you have an issue, or let's say emergency, immediately you will take the action and you call them.